We get this question all the time, especially from people who are coming off of employer plans that are PPO. They need to get their own individual family coverage through Covered California. And so their first question is, can I get a PPO? I like how that works. What's available on the market? And there's a lot to cover there. Give us a couple minutes. We'll walk through the basics. And by the end, you'll have a really good understanding of what is available through Covered California for PPO plans, how it's different from employer plans, and some key tips on how to shop that part of the market and get the best value and the best situation, especially when it comes to networks. Let's go right into it. First, who are we? We are certified Covered California agents. We have 25 plus years experience, and we have enrolled thousands of Covered California applications over the last decade. We've seen every situation out there. There's zero cost for assistance. Check our Google reviews to see how people view our services. We can bring that to you to help you out with this process. So let's turn to the question at hand. PPOs available as an individual or family in the California market. First of all, almost all the enrollment, maybe 99-100% these days, is through Covered California versus off exchange. There's no reason to go off exchange. We have a whole video covering why, but basically we can get subsidies and we can get much richer versions of the silver plan through Covered California, and that's why everything goes that direction. On Covered California, there are two PPO plans available. Blue Shield of California has a PPO plan, and HealthNet has a PPO plan. We'll talk a little bit about how to compare these two, but first, a lay of the land. Understand that the benefits are standardized on Covered California. So a Silver 73 plan is going to have identical benefits with a PPO versus an HMO, and even between carriers. So that makes the benefit comparison very easy to do. But then if you look at the pricing, for example, with the two PPO plans, they can be very different from the HMOs of the other plans. Blue Shield tends to be the most expensive on the market, and HealthNet is usually cheaper than the Blue Shield, but generally much more expensive than HMO plans. So what gives there? Why are PPOs more expensive? And also, if we have a subsidy, it's going to apply equally to a PPO or an HMO plan, but the PPOs will still be more expensive. What we're buying is network. We're buying access to certain doctors and hospitals and flexibility of how we use those doctors and hospitals. That's what the PPO is versus an HMO, which is generally locked into an area where you're based at. You have a lot more control over healthcare decisions from the carrier versus between you and your doctor. So if you've come out of an employer plan and you had a PPO and you want a PPO, that's usually what you're looking for. You want that flexibility, you want that control. Just understand there's a cost to doing that. And you see that on the PPO side. They're more expensive, but they're much more flexible. And we've got HealthNet, we have Blue Shield. Now, let's compare those two options to see how different they can be. Okay, the two PPOs that are in Covered California. A, why is there such a price difference if the benefits are identical, even between two PPO networks? It's all about the list of doctors and hospitals you have access to. And what we're finding is, depending on the area, Shield is usually going to have a broader network for their PPO plan than HealthNet, usually significantly more broader. For example, if you go up to San Francisco and you want UCSF, which is the dominant network outside of Kaiser, it's going to be Blue Shield. It's going to be Blue Shield PPO, and even their HMO starting this year will start to work with it. But definitely if you want a PPO, it's going to be Blue Shield. HealthNet is not there. Where we see HealthNet start to have a more competitive network is if we go out to Riverside County, or if we go down to San Diego County, or that stretch all the way between those two with a little bit of orange in there. And so what we usually need to do is we need to check your doctors and hospitals. You can email those over to us to help@calhealth.net. Let us know your doctors, the city they're in, and or hospitals you want access to. We'll go chase that down, because the online directories are kind of a mess. When you run a quote below, you can click on the Find Doctor side and do it yourself, but there are so many different networks, There is an individual family PPO. We call it Covered California PPO, so the doctors know how to answer that question correctly. There are employer PPOs that are different. They're broader. There are old grandfathered plans, PPOs, which are also broader. So it really gets tricky trying to figure out which plans work with our doctors. Don't do the work. Let us do that for you, no cost. Give us your doctors, your hospitals. We'll let you know which PPO they work with. Again, we see more overlap in Riverside, San Diego, and a little bit in Orange County. Outside of that, like LA County, Blue Shield dominates. UCLA, for example. Again, we see that with UCs quite a bit. So reach out to us for your area. We'll be able to check out who they work with, because that's what we're picking. We are picking networks. The core benefits are the same. The way they work is roughly the same. So really it comes down to doctors and hospitals. And if we want to pick a PPO, we're probably doing it for that reason, to get our doctors. Well, in that case, we got to double check that piece. That really is half of our work these days, is chasing down the doctors. We're on the phone sometimes if they don't show up in a directory because they bill underneath a medical group and we have to track that down. We can do all that for you. Reach out to us, let us know, and we'll get started. Let's also touch base on another piece, which is you're coming off of an employer plan. Usually, if you're picking a PPO, there's a difference, and we need to double check on this as well. Usually, people are coming off an employer PPO plan, and they're like, okay, I have to get individual family coverage. I want a PPO. They may have been on Blue Shield of California. They see Blue Shield PPO. Oh, great. They're going to have all my doctors. I'm good to go. Unfortunately, no. The individual family plan networks, whether through Covered California or off exchange, so there's no difference there, is going to be smaller than employer networks across the board for HMO and for PPO. And it can be a big difference. For example, Stanford. Right now in 2025, we cannot get Stanford on an individual family basis. And yet I just ran a quote for a couple that they were looking at employer coverage, and all the major PPOs cover Stanford. So that's an issue. And we see that up and down the state depending on where you're at. Again, Shield's going to have a broader network. So Cedars-Sinai, UCLA, example, if we're in LA, we're going to be okay with the Blue Shield PPO. But just understand, it's not going to be the same network as what you had with an employer. It just isn't. That's why we need to double check those doctors and hospitals. The other thing is, if we go out of state, a lot of the employer-based plans will have access, for example, to the Blue Card network, where you can go to any Blue Cross Blue Shield provider in another state and they'll extend your benefits in a non-emergency situation. We don't have that right now on the individual family with a PPO plan. In certain areas, Anthem's EPO still has access to Blue Card. It's not available everywhere. But for a PPO plan, it really means statewide. Now, if we have an emergency situation in another state, let's say you're skiing in Utah and you get hurt, you're going to be okay if it's a true emergency. And that's true for all the plans. They're not going to hold you to a network for a true emergency in another state. But we don't have that elective ability to go get services done in another state like we do with employer plans. So for some people where they're straddling a county line, that's an issue. Let us know. For example, up in Truckee or Tahoe or down south in the desert. If you might have services in Nevada, we need to touch base on that and see if the Anthem EPO is available, because the PPOs aren't going to work for you in that situation. So if you're coming off an employer, just understand that's different, and understand out of state is going to be different. Otherwise, the PPO plans, Shield and Health Net, work the way you would expect them to be. You have flexibility, you have control, and you have a broader network up and down the state. You're not locked into a region. Those are the broad strokes. Now let's touch base on some tips that will help you quote and compare these plans well. Okay, how do we get the best value and figure this piece out? We want a PPO plan. Great. We talked about the two networks, the two carriers, Health Net, Blue Shield of California through Covered California. Here are some tips that will help you get the best value, since these plans do tend to be more expensive. First, there's no reason to go higher than the Silver 73. It's almost a gold level plan, but they changed it in 2025 where anyone could qualify regardless of their income. You may even get richer versions like the 87 or 94, but definitely the 73 should be available. No reason to go to gold or platinum. That's literally throwing money away, and we can help you compare that for your situation. So that's first of all. Second, dial in the doctors. That may be the final decision of which way to go. And then if you're older or if you have a larger family, let's say 50s, 60s, or a bigger family, you may want to look at that bronze, and we like the HDHP version of it versus the silver. Even though the silver is much richer, that bronze plan for older people can save us $4, $5, $6, up to $10,000 a year in premium. Well, it's really hard to make that silver, being much richer, ever work out in your favor. It's only going to be giving money to the carrier versus the high deductible HDHP plan, which is just a clean, straight high deductible. The networks, the PPO networks, are identical between the two plans. It's really how much you pay and then what the benefits are, or how much they're going to pay when things come up. Happy to walk through that for your situation. Just need zip code, dates of birth, and best estimate for this year's income. And that's the final piece. Income drives everything now. Your income estimate is for this year in question that you're going to get covered, meaning what you're going to show on your 1040 tax form next April. It's the adjusted gross income that we're trying to estimate. This can be tricky, especially for people where there's change. They're coming off of employer coverage. They're losing a job. We're trying to estimate this year's income as best as we can, and we can update that if we need to. And we can walk through your specific situation to try to dial that in, because it directly drives subsidy, which can really affect the price you're going to pay for those PPO plans. So if that takes a little bit of focus and energy to dial in as well as possible, we're here to help you with that. That's the lay of the land. PPO, networks, doctors, don't go higher than the silver. Maybe look at that bronze, and then really dial in the income. And then finally, the application process is tricky online. Well, come to us. We can help you with that with a simplified online app, or if you already have a Covered California account, you can delegate us for no cost, and we can help process that out smoothly, especially on the income. Because if you put in the income as dropped, for example, it may throw you into Medi-Cal. And Medi-Cal has all HMOs. You're definitely not going to get a PPO. So we really need to figure out that income piece and do it correctly so you have options, you have subsidies, and you get access to these PPO plans. You may have more questions than ever, so reach out to us. No cost for assistance. We're here to help you out. If you stuck around this long, thank you. We appreciate it. You probably have more questions. Reach out to us. There's zero cost for assistance. You can call, email, chat, or best yet, book a time, and we can go through your personal situation to address any questions regarding California health insurance. Because a lot of sources out there are nationwide, and California is really unique. We need to go through the specifics of your situation in your area to find the best options. We don't push. We don't try to sell anything. We answer questions. And if you look at our Google reviews, you'll see that reflected in how we deal with this. We're happy to help. Reach out to us. And do us a big favor. If you could like and subscribe below, that's fantastic, so we can keep bringing this information to California.